So hello and welcome back yet again to another evening with Heidi by Johanna Spyri. You would think after reading however many chapters it is I have read of this book, I would remember the woman's last name, but it gets me almost every time. I think because of the whole Herr Sessman thing, it kind of felt too similar and it's glitched in my brain. I hope everybody is doing good. I'm taking the day off berry picking. I had some editing to do and a bunch of other silly things, and I probably should have gone out berry picking, but I think I overdid it. So I figured a day off. Unfortunately, I think I'm also going to have a day off like either tomorrow or the next day because we're supposed to be getting storms. We could use the rain. I think I say that every single time, but with a garden, you're always like, yes, give me more rain. Anyway, I hope you guys are all doing well. We are almost finished with Heidi, which means if I am on the ball and actually remember, I'm going to put up a poll starting tomorrow. And I think we're finishing Heidi on Saturday, and we'll probably start the next book on like Monday. I do have to agree, I do wish I could find a public domain book that was fantasy. I love fantasy. It's probably my favorite thing. I guess the closest we've gotten so far has been Jules Verne, although he's a lot more sci-fi. I have enjoyed Jules Verne, though. I might keep an eye out whenever I go into the bookstore and see if I can find more Jules Verne, because I do like him. But if you know of any fantasy books that are in the public domain, drop them in the comments down below and I will keep my eyes open for them. So far, I haven't found any. Anyway, we are going to be jumping back in, though, to book 2 of Heidi, and we are jumping into chapter 6, which is titled News from Klara. May had come. From every height, the overflowing brooks were rushing down into the valley. Warm, bright sunshine lay on the mountain. It had grown green again. The last traces of snow had melted away, and the first little flowers were peeping up out of the fresh grass. The spring blew through the fir trees and shook off the old dark needles so that the young, bright green ones could come out and dress the trees in splendor. Up high, the old robber bird was swinging his wings through the blue air, and around the elm hut the golden sunshine was warm on the ground. Heidi was on the mountain again. She ran here and there, and could not tell which spot was the loveliest. She liked to listen to the wind as it blew down from the cliffs above, coming nearer and growing mightier, and then leaping into the fir trees and bending and shaking them until it seemed as if they were shouting in delight. Heidi shouted too, while she was blown hither and thither like a little leaf. Then she would run back to the sunny spot in front of the house, sit down on the ground, and peep into the short grass to see how many flowers were open. From the workshop behind the house, every now and then came the sound of busy hammering and sawing. One day when Heidi ran in to see what her grandfather was doing, he had just finished a fine new stool and was working on another one. "Oh, I know what this is for," cried Heidi. "It's for the grandmamma when she comes from Frankfurt. And the stool you're making now is for Klara. But we'll have to have one more. Do you think—" She hesitated. "Do you think that Fräulein Rottenheimer will come with them?" "I can't say," said her grandfather, "but it will be safer to have one ready so that we can invite her to sit down if she comes." Heidi looked critically at the little wooden stool and wondered how it would suit Fräulein Rottenheimer. "Grandfather, I don't believe she would sit on it," said Heidi. "Then we will invite her to use the sofa with the beautiful green grass on it," said Grandfather. Suddenly, There came from above a whistling and a calling, and the sound of a rod swinging through the air. Heidi ran out, and in a twinkling she was surrounded by the leaping goats. They must have been glad to be up on the mountain again, for they jumped higher and bleated more merrily than ever before. But Heidi had no time to play with them today, for Peter handed her a letter. "Did you find a letter for me in the pasture?" said Heidi. "No," said Peter. And this was true. The postmaster in Dorfley had given the letter to Peter the night before, and he had put it in his empty bag. That morning he had put his bread and cheese on top of it, and had forgotten all about it until he had eaten his lunch. Heidi read the address and ran back to her grandfather. "Here's a letter from Frankfurt, from Klara. Would you like to hear it now, grandfather?" Grandfather was very ready to hear it. And so was Peter, who followed Heidi into the shop and leaned with his back against the door to have support while he listened. Heidi opened the letter and began reading. "Dear Heidi, everything is packed, and in 2 or 3 days we shall start on our journey. The doctor comes every day and calls at the door, 'Away, away to the mountains.' He is impatient for us to be off. You know how much he liked it on the Alm. He has come to see us almost every day all winter, and he told me all about the days he spent with you and your grandfather. He told me about the mountains and the flowers and the stillness so high above all the villages, and about the fine fresh air. He often told me, everybody ought to go get well up there. He's so different from the way he had been for a long time, and he looks young and happy again. Oh, how glad I shall be to see you on the mountain and to learn to know Peter and the goats. But first, I have to take the cure in Ragetz for about 6 weeks. The doctor has ordered it. After, we will stay in Dorfley, and I will be carried up the mountain in my chair during the good weather to spend the day with you. Grandmama is coming as well, but think of it, Fräulein Rottenheimer will not come with us. Almost every day, Grandmama says to her, 'How is it about the journey to Switzerland, worthy Rottenheimer? If you would like to come, you can.' But she always thanks the grandmama politely and says that she would not be so presuming. But I know what she's thinking about. Sebastian gave a frightful description of the mountains when he came back from going with you. What terrible overhanging crags there were, and what danger was everywhere of falling down into the ravines. That made Fräulein Rottenheimer shudder, and since then she just has not been enthusiastic about traveling in Switzerland. Tinette, too, has become frightened, and she will not come with us. So we're coming alone, Grandmama and I. I can hardly wait. Goodbye, Heidi. Grandmama sends you 1,000 greetings as well. Your true friend, Klara." When Peter heard these words, he ran out of the shed. He struck out right and left so recklessly with his rod that the goats took fright and ran down the mountain. He ran after them, beating at the air with his rod as if he had to vent his spite on some invisible enemy. This enemy was the prospect of guests coming from Frankfurt, but Heidi was so full of happiness, she decided to visit grandmother the next day and tell her about it. She found the old lady sitting once again in the corner spinning. She seemed troubled, for Peter had come home in great anger the night before, and from his mumblings she had understood a huge crowd of people from Frankfurt were coming up to the Alm. What would happen after, Peter didn't know, and grandmother had been so worried that she couldn't sleep. Heidi sat down on the stool near the spinning wheel and began telling her the good news. Suddenly she stopped, right in the middle of a sentence. "What is the matter, grandmother? Don't you like all of this even a bit?" "Yes, Heidi, I am glad for you, because it will give you so much pleasure." "But, grandmother, I can see that it troubles you. Do you think Fräulein Rottenheimer will come with them?" said Heidi. No, it's nothing, said Grandmother. Let me take your hand, Heidi, so I can feel you're still here. It will be a good thing for you, even if I don't live to see the day. Well, I don't care what's best for me if you're not going to live to see it, Grandmother, said Heidi. Grandmother was silent. She took it for granted that the people from Frankfurt would want to take Heidi home with them now that she was well again, and this was a grief to the grandmother, but she felt that she ought not say anything about it, because then Heidi would feel sorry for her and might object to going, and that must not happen. I know something, she said, that will make me feel better and bring me happy thoughts again. Read me the hymn that begins God will bring. Heidi had become so familiar with the old hymn book that she found the place at once and began to read. God will bring everything into order as is wholesome for thy soul. Thou shalt be safe at sea, though the foaming billows wildly around thee roll. Yes, that is what I want to hear, said Grandmother. She was relieved, and the expression of distress disappeared. When evening came, and Heidi was climbing up the mountain again, one little star after another came out and twinkled at her. She had to stand still every few minutes and look at them. When she reached the hut, her grandfather was standing out in front, also looking at the stars, for they had not been so beautiful for a long time. A morning, about a month later, Heidi was playing in front of the hut when suddenly she said, Grandfather, come here, see? The Almuncle rushed outside to find the child beside herself with excitement. A strange procession was winding up the mountain. First came two men with a sedan chair in which sat a young girl wrapped up in shawls. Then was a stately lady riding a horse and talking with the guide walking at her side. Another guide was pushing an empty wheelchair, and last of all was a porter with so many wraps and shawls and furs piled up in the basket on his back that they were high above his head. There they are, said Heidi. Klara and her grandmamma were really truly coming. They came nearer and nearer, and at last they were there. The porter put the chair down on the ground, and Heidi ran to it, and the two children greeted each other with delight. The grandmamma dismounted from the horse and embraced Heidi, and then she turned to the Almuncle, who had come to welcome her. There was no formality in their greeting. They felt as if they had known each other for a long time. My dear uncle, said Grandmamma, what a wonderful location you have. A king might envy you, it's so glorious. What do you say, Klara, my child? Klara was looking around enchanted. How beautiful it is here, she said again and again. I never imagined anything like it. I wish I could stay. Meanwhile, Almuncle had pushed along the wheelchair, taken some shawls out of the basket and arranged them in it, and then he stepped up to the sedan chair. If we put the little child in her accustomed chair now, it might be better for her. This traveling chair is a little hard. And without waiting for anyone to assist him, he lifted Klara gently and placed her in her wheelchair. He tucked a cushion under her feet and wrapped a shawl around her knees as skillfully as if he had devoted his whole life to caring for her. Grandmamma looked at him in astonishment. My dear, she said, if I knew where you learned to care for the sick, I would send all the nurses there to take lessons. How is this possible? Uncle smiled sadly. It comes more from experience than study, he said, remembering the suffering face of a man who used to sit wrapped in a chair just like this. It had been his captain, who he had found lying on the ground after a battle in Sicily and carried from the field. From then on, the captain had allowed no one else to nurse him until his suffering had ended. The sky up above was spread like a canopy, deep blue and cloudless up above the hut and the fir trees and the cliffs. It fascinated Klara. "Oh, Heidi, if only I could walk around with you and see everything," she said. Heidi made a great effort, and she succeeded in rolling the chair over the smooth, grassy ground under the fir trees, and here she paused. Klara had never seen anything like the tall old fir trees with their widespread branches growing down to the ground. For many years, those trees had stood looking down into the valley, where men would come and go while trees remained. Then Heidi pushed the wheelchair in front of the goat shed and opened the little door so Klara could look inside. There wasn't much to see, for the goats weren't home. Klara called back, "Grandmama, if I could just wait for Schwanli and Barley and all the other goats and Peter, I can never see them if we always have to leave early." "Dear child, we will enjoy all the beautiful things that are here and not think about those that are wanting," said Grandmama's voice. "Oh, look at the flowers," said Klara. "Whole bushes of fine red flowers and all the bluebells. If I could just go get some." So Heidi ran off and brought back a big bunch of flowers and laid them in Klara's lap. "But this is nothing," she said. "If you could come up into the pasture with us, then you would really see something. There are ever so many more bluebells than here, and there are so many yellow wild roses that the ground looks like gold. If you sit down there, you'd never want to get up again, 'cause it's so pretty." Klara's eyes shined with enthusiasm. "Oh, Heidi, if only I could climb everywhere on the mountain with you." "I'll push you," said Heidi. "I know I could do it." Meanwhile, Grandfather had not been idle. The table and chairs were standing by the bench in the front of the hut, and everything was ready for their meal. Their good dinner was steaming in the kettle and roasting on the big fork over the fire inside the hut, so it was not long until Grandfather had everything on the table and everyone sat down. Grandmama was enchanted with this dining room, from which one could see far down into the valley. A mild breeze fanned the faces of the guests and rushed pleasantly among the fir trees as if it had been told to furnish the music. "Nothing like this has ever happened to me. It's glorious," said Grandmama again and again. "But what is that I see? Are you taking a second piece of cheese, Klara?" And sure enough, a second piece of cheese lay on Klara's bread. "Oh, it tasted so good, Grandmama, better than anything in Ragaz," said Klara. "Eat well," said the Alm-Uncle. "It's our mountain air that succeeds whenever the cook fails." Time passed quickly, for the Grandmama and the Alm-Uncle had taken a liking to each other, and the conversation became more and more lively. Finally, Grandmama looked to the west and said, "We must soon be getting ready, Klara. The sun is already going down. The people will be back with our horse and chair." An expression of sadness came over Klara's happy face. "Oh, Grandmama," she begged, "just 1 hour more, maybe 2. We haven't seen the hut or Heidi's bed or—" "It's not possible," said the Grandmama. But she too wanted to see the hut, so they rose at once from the table, and Alm-Uncle directed the chair in through the door. Here it could go no farther, for the chair was too wide for the opening. So the Alm-Uncle picked Klara up and carried her in. Grandmama walked back and forth, interested in the Alm-Uncle's well-ordered domestic arrangements. She even climbed the little ladder leading into the hayloft. "How sweet it smells," she said. "It must be very healthful sleeping in this room." Grandfather followed, carrying Klara, and Heidi climbed up after. They all stood around Heidi's beautifully made hay bed. The Grandmama looked at it quite critically, every now and then drawing in a deep breath of the spicy fragrance of new hay. "What a jolly place, Heidi," said Klara. "From your bed you can see into the sky, and you can hear the fir trees outside. I've never seen such a pleasant sleeping room in my life." "I have an idea," said the uncle. "That is, if Grandmamma is not opposed. I believe if we could keep the little one here for a while, she would grow strong. I would take care of her. You've brought so many shawls and wraps that we could arrange a soft bed for her." This made Klara and Heidi shout with joy, and Grandmamma's face lit up. "My dear," she exclaimed, "how did you know what I was thinking? I was saying to myself, wouldn't it be wonderful for the child to stay up here? But the nursing, the inconvenience, but you speak as if it were nothing. Thank you. Thank you with all my heart." And then the Almuncle carried Klara back to her chair in front of the hut, and Heidi followed. Then he piled all the shawls and fur robes up into his arms and climbed back into the hayloft. While Grandmamma watched, he spread the shawls one after another over the hay. There were so many that the bed finally looked like a little fortress. "Now let a single hay stick through that if it can," said the Grandmamma. But the bed was so impenetrable that no hay could go through it. Then she climbed down the ladder, quite satisfied, and went out to the children, who were sitting close together, planning what they would do while Klara stayed on the mountain. But how long would it be? When they asked Grandmamma, she said that the Almuncle would know best about that. So they asked the question of him. He said that in about 4 weeks they should be able to tell if the mountain air was helping Klara or not. 4 weeks! That made the children very happy. The porters with the chair and the guide with the horse were seen coming up the mountain. When the Grandmamma was preparing to mount her horse, Klara said, "Oh, Grandmamma, we won't say farewell, for you'll come back every now and then to visit. That'll be great, won't it, Heidi?" Heidi, who had had one pleasure after another that day, could only express her delight by jumping in the air. Grandmamma mounted the sturdy horse, and Uncle took the bridle and led the horse down the mountain. She had decided it might be lonely being in Dorfli without Klara, so she planned to return to Ragaz and take the journey up the mountain every now and then from there. Before Uncle came back, Peter came along with his goats. When they saw Heidi sitting by Clara's chair, they all ran towards her, and in a moment the 2 girls were in the middle of the flock. One goat was always crowding and pushing to see over another. Everyone was called up in turn and presented by Heidi to Klara. Very soon, Klara made the long-wished-for acquaintance of Schwanli and Distelfink and all of the grandfather's goats and all of the rest of the herd. Peter watched, scowling. Later, when he drove the goats down on the mountain, both girls called, "Good night, Peter," but he made no reply. Instead, he raised his rod angrily in the air and ran after the frightened flock. Now came to an end all the lovely things Klara had seen that day on the mountain. When she and Heidi lay on their fine, soft beds in the hayloft, she looked through the round open window at the stars. "Heidi," she said, "look, it's as if we were riding in the sky in a high carriage." "Yes, and do you know why the stars are so full of joy they wink at us?" said Heidi. "No," said Klara. "They see up in heaven how well everything is for people, so that we don't need to worry because everything will happen for the best. That makes the stars happy, and so they wink. But we can't forget our prayers, Klara. We must ask God to think of us when he's directing everything, and then we'll always be safe and need never be afraid of anything." So the 2 girls sat up in bed and said their prayers. Then Heidi laid her head down on her arm and fell asleep in a twinkle. But Klara stayed awake for a long time, for she had never seen anything as wonderful in her entire life as this sleeping room in the starlight. Honestly, she had hardly ever seen the stars. She had never gone outside of her house at night, and the thick curtains had always been pulled long before the stars came out. Now, whenever she closed her eyes, she had to open them again to make sure that the stars were still shining. When she finally fell asleep, Klara could still see the stars in her dreams. And that is the end of the chapter. So that was kind of nice. I wonder why the door to the hut is either so narrow or the chair so wide that Klara couldn't get through. I mean, it does seem like pretty much everything was made smaller back in the day, so maybe that's it. Anyway, like I said, we don't have very far to go. Hopefully, Klara gets healthy and Peter gets over his attitude and we have a wonderful happy ending. I can't see that we would have a sad ending in this book, not the way it's been kind of laid out from the beginning. So, thank you so much for listening. Please do hit the thumbs up on your way out if you wouldn't mind. It does always make me happy, and I will see you tomorrow.